Jessica, it's all your fault. You make me angry. You, who dared to defy me despite being my slave. If you can't obey me, I'll divorce you. Kent spat these words, hurling insults at me. I stood there, beer dripping from me, listening to his rage. But strangely, the beer bath worked in my favor. I stopped tallying expenses, glanced at the smartphone on the table, and calmly replied, "Well, thank you, Kent, for pouring beer on me. You've just sealed your own fate. Are you mocking me, or did the beer make you drunk? The divorce threat isn't an idle one. Look at this." Kent produced a completed divorce paper after scrutinizing it. I couldn't help but smirk. He had underestimated me entirely. I knew why he treated me like a slave and why he had the divorce papers ready. I knew everything. Swiftly, I launched my counterattack against my husband, who had essentially dug his own grave. Stepping back, I made sure he could see my phone. Kent's eyes shifted to the phone that I had kept hidden, now playing videos. "If you have time for that, make dinner already. Honestly, how many times do I have to tell you?" Just as he was about to continue, he stopped abruptly. After a few seconds of silence, he began trembling, his gaze darting between my face and the phone screen. He looked more panicked than I had ever seen him. Seeing his reaction, I couldn't help but smirk. What he saw on the screen was my father. He had heard Kent's insults, seen him pour beer over me, and witnessed him thrust the divorce papers at me. My husband, trembling, tried to speak, but then my father's sharp words came through the phone. "Kent, do you know how to write a resignation letter?" The sharpness of the words left Kent speechless, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. Despite belittling me as his slave, he could never stand up to my father. Kent worked for my father's company, making my father not only my parent but also his boss. Seeing my father's presence on the screen, Kent had no choice but to acknowledge and apologize. However, he chose a different approach. "Boss, sir, there seems to be a misunderstanding. This was just a marital dispute. It's not what you think. Please, calm down." Despite his desperate attempt to explain, my father did not nod in agreement. His expression grew sterner. Kent's breathing became erratic, and sweat beaded on his forehead. "Kent, that's not an answer. I asked you if you know how to write a resignation letter. And regardless of whether it's a marital spat, do you think it's acceptable to throw beer on someone?" I know how to write one, but I have no intention of doing so." It was nothing serious. I didn't throw the beer on purpose. My hand just slipped. "Sorry, Jessica." "I'll get a towel right away, Kent." "Forget the towel. Listen to what my father has to say." I matched my father's stern gaze. Kent stopped moving, but glared at me from an angle where my father couldn't see. His expression screamed slave, but the intensity was significantly reduced, proof that he was being cornered. I nodded at my father, indicating he should continue. "Don't bother with excuses. I saw and heard it all. You insulted Jessica and poured beer on her. Whether it's between spouses or parents and children, it's irrelevant. If anyone else had witnessed this, they'd think you were behaving like a monster." Kent could only listen in silence, aware that any further words would only make things worse. He was beginning to understand the gravity of the situation. "Since you were laid off from your previous job, you've worked hard at my company. You've achieved significant results, and I had high hopes for you. But I never expected this kind of behavior. I can't overlook what you've done to my daughter. As her father, I can't ignore your actions." Kent, who had previously been lording over me, now seemed small and insignificant. The room fell silent, and a few seconds later, Kent fell to his knees, apologizing. "I am truly sorry, boss. No, father-in-law, for hurting your precious daughter." Lately, nothing has been going right for me. While I've achieved great results, I couldn't maintain them. This led to being talked about behind my back by superiors, colleagues, and subordinates alike. I felt the pressure of your expectations and tried my best, but I reached my limit. I could only lash out at Jessica to keep myself together. As he explained, he continued bowing deeply, his voice and body shaking, seemingly genuinely remorseful. Even through the phone screen, my father's face showed deep disappointment, accompanied by a heavy sigh. It was clear he had genuinely expected better from Kent. I understand your situation, but don't think you'll be easily forgiven. What you've done is serious, and you must take responsibility. I'm coming over now, so wait for me. Do not touch Jessica until I get there. If you do, you know what will happen, don't you? My father made his point with calm anger before disappearing from the phone screen. Even as my husband remained bowing deeply, I was startled by a sudden, forceful shove. Jessica, how dare you? This is all you're doing, isn't it? Admit it. Just a moment ago, he was trembling, but now he's standing tall. My husband, now aggressively coming at me, looks oddly lively. Even though he was just told not to lay a hand on me, he's grabbing me by the collar and threatening me. But this is all within my expectations and actually convenient for me. I'll tell you the truth, so can you let go? If Dad finds out, it won't end well for you. Just when I thought you were acting strange, you set up this dirty plan to trap me. Spill it before Dad gets here. Even as he released my collar, his threatening gaze didn't leave me. But I was determined not to back down. I glared back at him and opened my mouth. When we were dating and early in our marriage, you were kind and dependable. That's why I married you without hesitation and felt happy. But within months, you changed. I kept enduring it, hoping you'd go back to the way you were. I'm still kind and dependable. I work and provide for you, so it's only fair you meet my demands. Isn't it normal for a wife to serve her husband? I truly regret loving you without realizing your true nature. I reached my limit. That's why I used my phone to live stream this to Dad. I didn't expect you to throw beer on me, but it made your abuse undeniable, Kent. I will never forgive my husband. He betrayed me and my father. My mother also betrayed us, left us, and found another man. Since then, Dad worked hard to raise me and started his own company. And now we've been deceived by family again. I can't forgive that. As I said before, it's all your fault. Yeah, I'm not at fault, Jessica. You take all the responsibility. When Dad gets here, you say it was all my fault again. He grabbed me by the collar, threatening me with a monstrous look. It seemed the same as usual, but feeling cornered, it felt more dangerous. Even if he threatened me now, I wouldn't yield. However, making him angrier could be dangerous. I nodded slowly, saying nothing more. Seeing that, he smiled a disgusting, satisfied smile. He still thinks he can control me, but everything is in my hands. Rather, he's already done for. No matter what he does, it's over for him because I know everything. I've been preparing for today with a calm determination. I waited for Dad to arrive. An hour later, the intercom rang, announcing Dad's arrival. When I answered, Dad looked out of breath. He must have come rushing, worried. As he entered the living room, my husband gave me a silent reminder. Don't do anything unnecessary. Stick to the plan. His face said so. I nodded silently. Dad came into the living room and sat on the couch. My husband and I sat across from him, and Dad slowly began to speak. Kent, I don't intend to keep you at the company. As I said before, we'll take responsibility. Naturally, you'll divorce Jessica and pay alimony. At Dad's stern voice, my husband's body flinched. Dad, I am truly sorry, but Jessica has something to say first. My husband glanced at me, and I met his eyes, recalling our earlier discussion. His proposal was, let's pretend you were having an affair. He suggested that he lost his temper and threw beer on me. Such a flimsy lie would be exposed as soon as it was investigated. Even for a short period, such a poor lie wouldn't fool my father. My husband, not realizing this, was quite desperate. Of course, I had no intention of going along with such nonsense. Pretending to agree, I decided to use it to plunge him into hell. Dad, there's something I need to tell you. My husband grinned at me, but his face turned pale the moment I placed a piece of paper on the table. What? What is this? No way. What is this? Spread out on the table were photos of my husband and me. In the photos, my husband had a monstrous look, grabbing my collar. These photos captured our earlier confrontation. Kent, I took extra precautions and set up a hidden camera. These photos are printed from what was recorded. You didn't know it attacked me. Of course, the scene of you throwing beer is also perfectly recorded. Even without live streaming, I've got proof of your abuse. So, got anything to say, Kent? I told you not to lay a hand on her, didn't I? Even your groveling apology was an act. You wanted to make me angry that badly. I understand your thoughts now. Oh no, there's a reason for that. It's not like that. Jessica was trying to set me up. Suddenly, my husband was lifted off the ground. This time, my father grabbed him by the collar and lifted him. My husband kicked his legs, but it was useless. My father, already strong, seemed to have unleashed his anger. It seems I have to teach you a lesson. How foolish you are. Listen, Kent, I'll do anything for my daughter. Do you have any last words? Stop, please stop. Seeing my husband gasping for breath, I felt it was dangerous and hurried to stop my father. Though excited, my father barely heard my voice and released his grip. My husband coughed and collapsed to the floor. Even though I couldn't forgive my husband, I couldn't agree to restraining him with force. My father, coming to his senses, muttered a small sorry as my husband caught his breath. Silence fell. There was nothing left for him but to admit his guilt, apologize, and take responsibility. Prepared for any excuse he might make, my husband took a drastic action. I will never admit it. I did nothing wrong. I keep telling you, the ones to blame are you and your family. Pointing his finger, my husband brazenly defied us. He should have shown weakness before my father, but now he was showing a big attitude, still refusing to admit it. How rotten are you? I'm not the rotten one. It's your family. I'll tell you why I married Jessica. Revenge on your family. My father was ruined by Jessica's mother. Because of her, we went through hell. What? Jessica's mother, my wife, did this to your father? Yeah, that's right. The woman who deceived my father was your wife. That woman destroyed my family. You're also responsible for letting her go. That's why I got close to Jessica for revenge. Oh, it felt so good to torment that woman's child. My mother left us for another man, who turned out to be my husband's father. Knowing this, my father looked deeply shocked, but also found it hard to believe. Then my husband pulled out his phone and showed a picture. At that moment, my father's eyes widened in disbelief. There's no mistake. This is my wife, and the man next to her is your father. That's right, there are plenty more photos. I was in high school then, and my dad was following them after graduation. He started a thorough investigation. By then, though, he was already falling apart. My husband looked down at my father as if he completely turned the tables. My father could only stare silently at the image. You told me I had to take responsibility, right? So you should take responsibility too. It's too late to fix anything, but I'll say this. I will do anything for my family. I will never forgive you. I apologize for my wife's actions, but I can't forgive you for what you did to Jessica. We are family, but Jessica has nothing to do with this. Don't drag her into it. She's very much involved. Just being related to that woman is enough. Jessica, watch your back from now on. I'll be watching you. With a twisted smile more sinister than when he was tormenting me, my husband spat out his threats. My father frowned deep in thought and fell silent, but I remained completely calm. I had known everything all along. The reasons for his abusive behavior and preparing the divorce papers were for revenge. My husband didn't know anything. To silence him, I played my final card. Kent, I understand what you're trying to say, but can you say the same after seeing this? I took out my phone and showed him an image. In an instant, his eyes widened in shock. Is that my father? Who are those women around him? Your father wasn't deceived. He was the one deceiving others. Not just my mother, but many other women. They all found out about his misdeeds and sued him. Most of them were married, so their husbands also went after him. So it wasn't my mother who drove him to ruin. It was your father himself. What? Don't lie to me. There's no way. You don't have to believe me. I'm just stating the facts. Before accusing me, maybe you should confront your father. I don't even know where he is. He disappeared. Shambles, Jessica, no matter what you say, I won't believe you. My father wouldn't deceive me. You're the one trying to deceive me. I don't care if you don't believe me, but I won't forgive what you did to me and the insults to my family. Your misunderstandings deeply hurt us. You need to take responsibility. Sign the divorce papers first, then we'll handle the rest through our lawyers. Looking at his face, he seemed deeply shocked, even though he claimed not to believe it. Part of him probably feared he might have been deceived by his father. Though my mother had been deceived and left us, I understood the pain of being betrayed by family. I couldn't blame him for being shocked, but that didn't justify hurting others. I wished he had chosen another way to act for his family, but it was too late now. As I stared at him with mixed emotions, he silently signed the divorce papers without any apology or remorse. He said, I'll expose your lies, Jessica. I'll divorce you and pay the alimony, but you will regret this. Mark my words. With that, he left the house. My father, unable to chase after him, stood in a daze, then turned to me and spoke heavily. Jessica, you knew about your mother. I had no idea and couldn't say anything back. I'm a really pathetic father. I'm sorry. Dad, you worked so hard for me. You didn't have time to investigate Mom, and no matter the facts, she left us. But I have you, Dad. Thank you for protecting me today. No, Jessica, you took a step forward on your own. I did nothing, but if Kent tries anything again, I'll protect you with all my strength. You can always rely on me. My father apologized sincerely. However, I was certain that my husband couldn't do anything anymore. Weeks later, I was living peacefully in my new home. There was no word from my ex-husband Kent, but then the incessant calls started coming in. Of course, I had anticipated this, but I didn't answer right away, leaving them unattended. The number of missed calls increased day by day. So I decided to pick up the phone at the right moment. You finally answered. How many times do I have to call? Answer the phone already, you idiot. We're not together anymore, so I don't have to answer. Why are you in such a hurry? I found out where my father is. At that moment, I sent data to Kent's phone immediately. His loud voice roared through the phone. You knew all along, didn't you? That my father had another family. The data I sent was a certain image. It showed his father with another family, looking very happy as if they were his real family from the start. Kent, you're right. I already knew your father had another family. It seems he was deceiving them too. Your father is quite a sinner. If you knew, why didn't you tell me sooner? I've been searching everywhere like a fool. Why should I tell you? I had no obligation to do so. I wanted you to regret your actions. Do you realize how foolish you've been? So what are you going to do now? I'm going to submit my resignation. I'll start over from scratch. I won't trust anyone again. Luckily, I made a lot of money at your father's company. I can live without working for a while, Jessica. You think you've won, but you're wrong. I'll be watching you live in fear. Even at the end, Kent was trying to threaten and enjoy himself, but he overlooked something crucial. He wouldn't be able to start over so easily. I decided to deliver the final blow. Do you remember what I said the day you threw beer on me? I told you your end was certain. So what? You got me fired as planned, right? No, that's not all. It wasn't just my father watching the live stream. I had your mistresses and their husbands watch too. What? No way. Kent, unaware of this, fell silent instantly. When the harassment began, I started investigating Kent to find the cause. It turned out he had several mistresses at work. His major achievements were actually the result of their efforts. But there was a bigger problem, Kent. You were deceiving and exploiting your mistresses. Weren't you using your position as the CEO's son-in-law to silence colleagues? You were also involved in bribery. There's a lot more, isn't there? Sadly, I know everything. I've also spoken to all your mistresses. They couldn't believe your true nature, so I had to live stream it. Understand now what you've done? Sneaky. What a woman, complaining all the time, and yet you're no better than me. You started this. Don't complain about what you've done. Like you and my father, I'll do anything for my family. Everything had come to light at the company, and you'll be sued. It'll be miserable, but don't regret it now. After calmly stating the facts, Kent fell silent again. A man who enjoyed tormenting others deserved no mercy from me. I couldn't forgive someone who tormented us due to his misunderstandings. I'll be watching you too. Live in fear. I'll always be watching. Repeating his words, I hung up the phone. Sure enough, Kent was sued by the company. He had committed undeniable crimes like data manipulation and embezzlement. He was also sued by his mistresses and their husbands, and the money he boasted about soon ran out. Desperate, he sent me countless messages of regret, reflection, and apologies, asking for money. Despite his misconceptions, I had been a target of his revenge, and now he faced a terrible fate beyond my imagination. Recalling how he treated me like a slave and deceived my father, I thought it was his just deserts. Karma, and didn't reply to his messages. As for Kent's father, I had no idea what became of him. I couldn't believe that someone could continue deceiving others and lead a decent life. Surely, one day, Kent's father would also face regret. As I looked up at the sky, I whispered to myself that the sun is always watching. And then I headed to my father's company. Today was my father's birthday, but he seemed as busy as ever with work. There was the same handsome profile I had admired since I was a child. Dad, thank you for being with me and being my family.